Now, here's something you probably never saw coming. Gangs in Chicago are complaining about gangs in Chicago.
America has allowed gangs to enter our country.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now.
The city of Chicago is gonna go up in smoke, it's gonna go up in flame.
Gangs in Chicago are angry over the influx of migrants and criminals in their city. They say money that should be going to the African American community on the South Side is instead going to what they call non-citizens.
You know crime is bad when the bad guys are complaining about crime. You know what's strange to me? And this really is the strangest part of it. By the way, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Sorry, bad manners. This is what's strange to me. That there are people, everyday citizens and residents, who are so sick of this TDA gang, so sick of these migrants coming in and causing problems, that they're now rooting for the local American street gangs, hoping that they can handle this situation. It's also very disheartening. It's sad because what it shows is that people are so much at their wits' end, and they have no faith in the system. They have no faith in the government, in elected officials. They have no faith in the authorities who are tasked with protecting us and keeping streets clean, that they've placed their hope and their faith inside of local street gangs to handle this situation. But we saw this in Aurora, Colorado, when people were downplaying the stories about Venezuelan gang members taking over apartment complexes, right? And police weren't doing anything. They weren't moving in, they weren't helping. People were just at their wits' end. And then there was like this bubble of hope when people heard that Hell's Angels might be stepping in to correct the situation. And I'm online watching people say, oh, Hell's Angel will handle this. They'll take care of this. I'm like, my God, Hell's Angels ain't no angels. They're a biker club, yes, but they've been tied. Some of their members have been tied to like prostitution, racketeering, shaking down people, all this sort of thing. That's what happens when you get to this point. People start putting their hope in anybody who seems like they could correct the problem. But I want to go to this video. This is a video from the New York Post, and I'm so grateful that they did this. They went on the ground in Chicago, and they talked to former gang members and active gang members who are giving some serious insight into what's happening in the Windy City, what's happening in this state. I say I give them a lot of credit for doing this because this is not a video or news story that you would find on ABC or NBC or CNN or MSNBC. They're not going to put these out here. And again, and I said this in the previous video, it was the video with the Tren de Aragua, in Colorado. I said I was so grateful for social media, for platforms like YouTube, platforms like TikTok that give people an avenue to talk about these things and give you, the audience, an opportunity to hear these stories. And somebody who's from Chicago was inside of my comment section saying, man, nobody's even talking about what's happening here with this Venezuelan gang here in Chicago. So I'm going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it.
The city of Chicago is going to go up in smoke, it's going to go up in flame, and there's going to be nothing that the National Guard or our government can do about it when the bloodshed hit the streets, blacks against migrants.
I want to stop it there to say, I don't think any of that is hyperbole. I remember watching television when, after George Floyd was murdered, after he was murdered in the street, and seeing how people lashed out across different states in the US. And it seems like our officials don't take these things seriously, even when there are warnings, because this is a warning. And he's speaking out, but let me tell you something, there are people who ain't saying anything publicly, but just plotting and planning behind the scenes. I honestly don't know what the Democrats are doing. I really don't. I wonder if they have a plan to repatriate these individuals, but they don't want to ruffle feathers now before the election. So they're like, let's just wait until after the election and then we'll get rid of them. Or if they just don't care. I don't know which of these two scenarios it is. Is it that they just don't care and they feel like immigrants should be able to just pour into the country at all willy-nilly and that's it? You're watching ThisBahamian Gyal. I'm not American. I'm a foreigner. I'm an immigrant into this country. I cannot tell you, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, I speak for myself, how offended I am as someone who has been coming to this country since she was 5 years old with my parent, always legally. When I came here to go to university, came here legally, paid out-of-state tuition, paid a bunch of taxes, flew right because I didn't want to do anything illegal in this country. I didn't want to overstay any visa. I did not want to break your laws. Later came here as a permanent resident, still flying right because that's who I am, and I don't want to disrupt anything in this country. I want to be here legally and just contribute to this country. I cannot begin to tell you how many thousands of dollars I paid over the years between being a university student and actually working here and living here now as a legal permanent resident. And I think some of you who watch my channel know that I recently got approved for my citizenship. This month, I will be sworn in as a U.S. citizen. And I'm saying all of this because I sit back as someone who said, I did everything the right way. I did everything the right way. I waited my turn, paid my fees, paid my dues, and I watch immigrants who are not all refugees come into this country and create havoc, and they're rewarded. And if I can feel tight about it as an immigrant, I cannot imagine what and how Americans who were born in this country feel. It's insulting. It's an outrage. And they keep giving them money. And the more Americans say, hey, these crazy things are happening right now in our cities. What are you doing? And you know what the response is? Or you're echoing Republican talking points. You're echoing conservative talking points. Patriots who care about their country are being just pushed off into this silo of you're just a conservative who hates immigrants. When I don't hear Republicans saying a damn thing about immigrants not coming here. They don't say we don't want immigrants. They say we want you to come here legally. And you got Democrats too in these cities who have voted blue, straight ticket Democrat all their lives saying, no more. This is pissing me off. I don't want to hear anyone. And I know I'm on a tangent right now. But I don't want to hear anybody talking about, oh, we don't have money for anybody. We don't have money for black people. We don't have money for war veterans, or we don't have money for homeless people. You got a lot of money. And I'm seeing it being given to the Ukraine. I'm seeing it being given to Israel. I'm seeing it being given to South American migrants. You got tons of money. And it pisses me off when I see Americans living under a bridge and they can't get help. People who are being evicted and they're waiting on a list for 100 years to get some sort of housing. They're waiting. And individuals can cross a border and get a cell phone and get hotel stay and be taken care of and get food. What you doing to your own American people? Your gate is wide open and you're leaving it as such.
Zach Massey did time in state prison with Tyrone Muhammad, although he's only 27. He's a leader on the streets and said he's disgusted by the money going to Venezuelan migrants at the expense, he says, of the African-American community.
I finally actually talked to him on the translator app, and he told me all the things that he got going on, how they help him get a car, apartment, clothes, link. So it's just like, I just be looking at it like they ain't got no social security number. Where they come from? He probably not even here legally.
They get right here, they get quick housing, quick funding, food. They get cars with no license. They can't even read English and stuff like that. So they get all these perks when they get here, and we still here starving. So what we gonna do about it? Are y'all gonna listen to our cries?
Corey Rogers was a Blackstone gang member for years. He drove us around the South Side and showed us areas where he said Tren de Aragua and other criminal gangs are setting up shop and what he called showing the flag, which means brandishing their weapons in front of like a housing project.
The migrants that are coming, they're taking over every block right now in this area. Right now, you don't see them because they come out at night. They said they took this courtway over probably by last week. They said it was 100 Venezuelans standing out in the front right here.
Terry, is it an abandoned building? How do they just take it over?
They just, when you take over something, you just stand outside, and that's called showing the flag.
What kind of guns do they have?
Semi-automatics, anything you name, you're gonna see it on the street. These boys got so many big guns that if they're 150 pounds, the gun is bigger than them. I swear.
But they know how to handle it, right? They know what. Tell me about the fact that they're criminals, right? This is a criminal element. These aren't just a bunch of Venezuelans that walked over the border and used to be gardeners back home, right?
Right. And they come from the gangland. They come from rougher gangs than us.
One gang member, who only gave his name as David, on a particularly dangerous drug dealing corner on the south side, did not hold back when he talked about the influx of criminal gangs from other countries into Chicago.
The real issue is that America has allowed gangs to enter our country. Gangs that they would consider terrorist groups that are formed here. We are terrorist groups. If we're in a gang, they let terrorists in our country.
You know, just hearing the fella inside the car talk about how they're showing the flag and they're holding the guns outside of these apartment buildings or wherever they are. It just reminded me again of Aurora, Colorado. I mean, you're hearing those same residents talk about how these fellas were standing outside with their guns late at night and intimidating the people who lived in those buildings, intimidating people, letting them know that they're setting up shop and they're running the territory. And, you know, I don't say any of this stuff to make people frightened. It is indeed a frightening situation, but I don't say any of this stuff to make them frightened. I say it because this is just mind-blowing to me that this can be allowed to happen. And I'm not going to glamorize or salute the gangs, the local gangs that are here either. They destroy their communities too. They murder people too. They contribute to the destruction of this country too. So they're no saints. I'm getting tired of having to scour the internet to find out what's going on in different states. And I say I'm getting tired because the mainstream media is ignoring these stories so much because, and again, I maintain, because it's an election year and it doesn't look good on this current administration. Donald Trump is not in power. Dr. Jill Stein is not in power. Dr. Cornel West is not in power. Joe Biden is in power for the next few days now because we're already in October. So no sense in blaming anybody else other than the people who are in power and who can affect the change today.
The Reverend Corey Brooks also said to me he's disgusted with Democratic policies and said that Black Lives Matter, for example, has never reached out to help him or anyone else trying to improve conditions on the South Side.
Chicago is a blue city. Illinois is a blue state. There's no doubt about it that the majority of our neighborhood, they're going to continue to vote Democrat until they wake up. The good news is that there are a lot of people who are responding and waking up and saying, listen, we're not going to take this. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to vote differently. And they're now accepting some of the values that I hold dear and some of the values that the conservative Republican Party holds so dear. And so for a lot of people, it's not about the person, it's about the policies that we're fed up with. And as a result, I think this is going to be the largest amount of people who have voted for a Republican president in Chicago that we've seen.
I also spoke to one Venezuelan man who was so scared of being identified that he put a hoodie on and refused to face the camera. He told me in Spanish that he had to flee the building where he was being housed because a Venezuelan criminal gang took it over. He said if they knew he was talking, they'd end his family's life back in Venezuela with one bullet.
Man, see, and this is why too, even when we're having these conversations, it's always important to put in perspective, put in context that this isn't all migrants. Yes, they broke the law coming into this country, but there are people who are genuinely good people who themselves are running away from that. They're crossing the border to get away from that. I recently had a conversation with a woman who is a refugee in this country. She's from Venezuela. A casual conversation. And she detailed all of the trash that they go through as a result, or they went through in Venezuela as a result of those gangs. What that young man just said, or what she said he said, about what they would do to his family back home, she confirmed that. Before I even saw this New York Post piece, she was talking about how brutal and lethal they are. The street gangs here in the United States, in Chicago, New York, they're saying that this gang, Tren de Aragua, is so vicious and brutal. They are willing to go 2 steps beyond what the local gangs would do. It's just a different mindset, a different culture. And you have people who just don't value life. They just don't. I want to read a report that the New York Post again did earlier this year. I think it was back in February. The New York Post did an article on their website where they interviewed an FBI agent, John Morales. And he was talking about the possibility of this MS-13 and Tren de Aragua forming an alliance. And those two gangs are so vicious, so bloodthirsty, so brutal. Individually, it blows my mind and scares me to think about what they can do together. So I want to read some of the comments that he said. He said, while these gangs wouldn't normally mix, it's always going to be a concern as the gang Tren de Aragua expands in strength and establishes a foothold. Right now, we're working with our local law enforcement partners and sharing intelligence in order to stop the growth of TDA. And the article goes on to say that gang members generally pass through border cities, such as El Paso, en route to other parts of the U.S. And the FBI is asking Venezuelan migrants to report gang members. Those Venezuelans are afraid as well. They are terrified. We do not know anything about what those people go through. Tren de Aragua has taken advantage of an explosion in Venezuelan migration to come across the southern border. And it just goes on and on. It's always been a concern of mine, and so many of you, I'm sure, when we hear about these crossings over at the border, at the southern border. And it's a concern because not all good people are crossing over. You got some really disgusting devils coming across as well and into our communities. We have some devils here. We got some devils here, but they're the devils we know. You know, when I think about all the money that is being spent on these migrants, it reminds me, it's so funny. It reminds me of a Tupac song, Keep Your Head Up, where he said, you know, it's funny when it rains, it pours. They got money for wars, but can't feed the poor. You have poor Americans, Black, white, Asian Americans, it doesn't matter, who are in dire straits. And they are waiting and waiting and waiting for help. They can't get it. And individuals can just cross right over and get taken care of. And there are always going to be people who say, well, you have to take care of them. You have to feed them. You have to, okay, you should have to feed your own people too. I'm not saying don't help people, but clean your house first. My family first. I'm not helping no neighbor if my family's suffering. I cannot. That's irresponsible. At this point, Americans need to rip up all their passports and all their documents. Go outside the country, sneak in through the southern border and get taken care of. That's the way to do it. I'm going to be having more conversations about this in subsequent videos, because these are conversations that need to be had, because I see that there's an appetite for this. There are people who are genuinely afraid. There are people who are genuinely frustrated because it seems as if nothing is being done despite their cries. I watch these town hall meetings all the time. And I'm hearing these residents, and I wonder, are y'all just, for these officials who go to these town hall meetings, are they just there to say, well, we held a town hall meeting and we let them vent their frustration? Or are they listening? Do they only pay attention during an election year? And when the election is over and the dust settles, then you're on your own again? Anyway, I have much more to come. So definitely stay tuned to this channel. If you're not subscribed and you like my content, you like my style, subscribe. But let me stop you right here to say this. If you are the type of person who, when I'm saying everything that you want to hear, or I'm confirming all the things that you believe, you subscribe. And next week, if I have a different opinion on something that does not align with your thinking, you're like, let me unsubscribe from you and you no longer serve me, don't subscribe. I want people who can say that message resonated with me. And if the next video doesn't resonate with me, it's okay. I'm still going to stay subscribed. If you are that like shaky, don't subscribe. Seriously, don't. Because I said on my platform, I have these conversations in public that we typically have in private. Private conversations we're having in public. All the things that you're saying with your family members and your friends in the secrecy of your home, I want to have them here. I want to address the elephant in the room. And sometimes I'm going to say things you don't agree with. Sometimes y'all say things to me in the comment section I don't agree with. I'm blocking y'all. Come back. So subscribe only if you are mature enough to understand that you will not always agree with everything I say. If not, you can watch and go on. That's quite fine with me. If you like videos like this, please be sure to watch this one next and that one. I'll see you all next time.